Check this out, Beastin right here, bringing you another Commander deck tech, and today we have Davros, Dalek Creator, wearing the Grixis colors, and we're going to focus on this modified precon where we get to utilize the Villianous Choice mechanic to give our opponents a not so great choice that's going to benefit everything that we do. Apart from creating all these fun artifact Dalek creature tokens, most of these are going to have Menace, and Davros himself being a 3/4 with Menace, and at the beginning of our end step, we get to create a 3/3 Dalek artifact creature token with Menace if a opponent lost 3 or more life that turn. Then each opponent who lost 3 or more life has to face a Villianous Choice. Either we get to draw a card, or that player has to discard a card. So we're going to really focus on this mechanic, that way we can win the game as fast as possible. So let's get right into this. First up are all the creatures. Of course, being from the Doctor Who set, we're going to focus on 3 main types. We have the Time Lords, we have the Aliens, and we have the Cybermen. So first up, we have the Master Formed Anew. This is a 2-drop 0/1 with Body Thief. When we cast the spell, we can exile a creature we control and put a takeover counter on it. Then we can have the Master Formed Anew enter the battlefield as a copy of a creature card in exile with a takeover counter on it. Next, we have the Cyber Controller. This is 2 blue, 1 black, and X, so however much mana we pay into it. When he enters the battlefield, each opponent is going to mill X cards, and then we get to put all creature cards milled this way on the battlefield face down. Has 2/2 Cyberman. He also has a Lord effect where each other artifact creature we control will get +1/+1. Now we have the Master Mesmerist. He has a really good activated ability where target creature a opponent controls with power less than or equal to the Master's power will gain Skulk until the end of turn, and we goad that creature. Skulk can't be blocked by creatures with greater power, so they're ultimately unblockable. And then whenever any creature with Skulk deals combat damage, we get to put a +1 counter on the Master, and we get to draw a card. Next, we have the Master Gallery's End. He has a static ability called Make Them Pay. Whenever another non-token artifact creature is put into a graveyard, we can exile it, and if we did, we get to choose an opponent with the most life among all our opponents. Then they have to face a Villianous Choice. Either they lose 3 life, or we create an exact token copy of that creature. Next, we have Cult of Skaro. Whenever Cult of Skaro attacks, we get to choose one at random. Either we can put a +1 counter on each artifact creature we control, which will beef up our board a lot, or we can draw 2 cards, or we can create a 3/3 black Dalek artifact creature token with Menace, and each opponent will lose 3 life. Next, we have Ashad, the Lone Cyberman. The first non-legendary artifact spell we cast each turn will have Casualty 2, so as you cast that spell, you can sacrifice a creature with power 2 or greater. If you did, you copy that artifact spell. He also has a built-in static ability. Whenever we sacrifice any other creature, we get to put a +1 counter on Ashad. Next, we have the Beast Deathless Prince. This is a demon, unfortunately. But when we cast the spell, we get to gain control of target creature. We get to untap it. It'll gain Menace and Haste. And then it'll enter the battlefield tapped with 6 stun counters on it. And then whenever any creature deals combat damage to the owner, we get to untap the beast and draw a card. Next, we have the Veilyard. If a opponent would face a Villianous Choice, they have to face that a additional time. And then while voting, we can vote a additional time. He's going to work very well alongside with Davros. Next, we have Rassilon, the War President. At the beginning of our upkeep, we lose 2 life and exile the top card of our library, but we can play that card as long as it remains exiled. And then each non-creature spell we cast from exile has Conspire. As we cast that card, you can tap 2 untapped creatures that share a color with it. If we did, we get to copy that spell. Now we have Missy. Whenever another non-artifact creature is put into a graveyard, we get to return it back to the battlefield face down, but it'll be a 2/2 Cyberman artifact creature. And then at the beginning of our end step, each opponent has to face a Villianous Choice. Either each artifact will deal 1 damage to that opponent, or we get to draw a card and chaos ensues. Now we have the Master Multiplied. This is Myriad, so the legend rule does not apply to creature tokens we control. So the more creature tokens that are legendary that we control, the way better off we're going to be. And triggered abilities can't cause you to sacrifice or exile tokens. Now we have the Dalek Emperor. This has affinity for Daleks, so his mana cost will cost 1 colorless less for each Dalek we control, and every single Dalek we control will have haste. And then at the beginning of combat on our turn, each opponent will have to face another Villianous Choice. Either that player sacrifices a creature, or we get to create another 3/3 black Dalek artifact creature token with menace. Now we have some alien creatures. So first up, we have Vashta Nerada. This is a 1/1 with Indestructible and Shadow. So it's going to be very difficult for our opponents to remove this card. And also, it has Morbid. So every single end step, if a creature died that turn, you get to put a +1 counter on Vashta. Next, we have Weeping Angel. This is a 2/2 with Flash, First Strike, and Vigilance. And whenever any opponent casts a creature spell, Weeping Angel is not a creature. And then if Weeping Angel would deal combat damage to a creature, we prevent that damage, and that creature's owner will shuffle it back into their library. This is a good way to deal with very large creatures our opponents might control. Now we have Zygon Infiltrator. This has body print, so for 2 colors of blue, we can tap another target creature to put a stun counter on it, and then Zygon Infiltrator becomes an exact copy of that creature for as long as it remains tapped. Now we have the Flood of Mars. This is a 3/3 with Island Walk, so if our opponents control islands, he can't be blocked. And then he has Water Always Wins. Whenever the Flood of Mars attacks, we get to put a flood counter on another target creature or land. If it's a creature, the Flood of Mars becomes an exact copy of that creature, and if it's a land, that land will become an island. Now we have Time Reaper. This is a 4/4 with Flying and Haste with Consume Anomaly. Whenever Time Reaper deals combat damage to a player, we get to put any face-up card they own into exile on the bottom of their library, and if we did, we get to gain 3 life. Now we have Sycorax Commander. This is a 4/2 with First Strike and Haste, and also has Sanctified Rules of Combat. When he enters the battlefield, each opponent will face a Villianous Choice. That opponent will have to discard all the cards in their hand and then draw that many -1, or Sycorax Commander will deal damage to that player equal to the number of cards in their hand. Next, we have all the artifact creatures that are either Cybermen or Daleks. First up, we have Cyberman Patrol. Artifact creatures we control will have a Flick 3. Whenever any creature with a Flick 3 becomes blocked, target defending player will lose 3 life. Next, we have Cybermat. This has Skulk, so he's already really hard to block. This creature can't be blocked by creatures with greater power, and whenever Cybermat attacks and isn't blocked, it gets +X/+O, where X is the number of attacking artifact creatures. Now we have Clockwork Druid. We can choose to exert Clockwork Druid when it attacks, and if we did, it can't be blocked, and we get to scry 1. Of course, we have Sad Robot. Look how sad he is. Of course, when he enters the battlefield, we get to search our library for a basic land and put it on the battlefield tap, and when he's put into a graveyard, we get to draw a card. Now we have all the Daleks. So we have Dalek Squadron. This is a 3/3 with Menace, but also has Myriad. Whenever this creature attacks, for each opponent we have, we get to create a token copy that's attacking that player, and then we have to exile all those tokens at the end of combat. Now we have Dalek Drone. This is a 3/3 with Flying and Menace with Exterminate. When Dalek Drone enters the battlefield, we get to destroy target creature a opponent controls, and that player loses 3 life. Next, we have Auton Soldier. We can choose to have Auton Soldier enter the battlefield as a copy of any creature, except it isn't legendary, but also has Myriad. Now we have Cybermen Squadron. Non-legendary artifact creatures will have Myriad. So our whole premise with all these artifact creatures is to produce as many Cybermen or Daleks. Okay, let's get into the artifacts. First up, we have our Soul Ring, our Wayfarer's Bauble, our Arcane Signet, Talisman of Indulgence, Talisman of Dominance. Now we have Thought Vessel, because we're going to be drawing lots of cards. We want to keep those cards in our hand. We have Mind Stone. We can pay one, sacrifice this to draw a card. Now, we need to protect Davros, so we have Lightning Greaves. The equipped creature will have Haste and Shroud. Of course, we have Commander Sphere. We can add 1 mana of any color that's in our commander's identity, or we can sacrifice this to draw a card. Now we have the iconic Laser Screwdriver. This is going to give us a bunch of different options. Either we can tap it to add 1 mana of any color, pay 1, tap it to tap target artifact. This is a good way to lock down our opponent's artifacts during their upkeep. Or we can pay 2, tap it to surveil 1. Or we can pay 3, tap it to goad target creature. This is going to be very fun to goad our opponent's commanders when they don't want to attack. Okay, now we have Midnight Crusader Shuttle. If we have power 2 or more, we can turn this into a artifact creature by crewing it. It'll become a 3/4 creature with Midnight Entity. Whenever Midnight Crusader attacks, defending player has to face a Villianous Choice. Either that player sacrifices a creature, or you gain control of target creature of your choice that player controls until the end of turn. And if we would gain control of that creature, we get to untap it and it's attacking that player. Next, we have Coercive Portal. This is Will of the Council. So at the beginning of our upkeep, starting with us, each player will vote for either Carnage or Homage. If Carnage gets more votes, we have to sacrifice Coercive Portal, and then we get to destroy all non-land permanents. If Homage is chosen, we get to draw a card. Of course, we have Cybership. For the low cost of 4 power, it'll become an 8/8 creature with flying, and whenever that creature deals combat damage, we get to exile the top 2 cards face down under our control, and they will be 2/2 Cyberman artifact creatures. Okay, let's get into the enchantments. We don't have very many, but they're all gonna synergize very well with what we're doing. We have Propaganda. That way it can deter our opponents from attacking us, because they will have to pay 2 colors for each attacking creature. Okay, now we have Blink. This is a very fun saga. Chapter 1, we get to choose target creature, and its owner will shuffle it back into their library, and then investigate. Chapter 2, we get to create a 2/2 black alien angel artifact token with first strike, vigilance, and whenever any opponent casts a creature spell, and if they did, that permanent will not be a creature until the end of turn. Then chapter 3, we go back to shuffling the creature back in. And then chapter 4, we get to create another 2/2 alien angel artifact creature token with that ability. Now we have Genesis of the Daleks. Chapter 1, we get to create a 3/3 Dalek. We get to do this 3 times. Then chapter 4, target opponent will have to face another Villianous Choice. Either we get to destroy all Dalek creatures, and each of our opponents will lose life equal to the total number of Daleks that died, or we get to destroy all non-Dalek creatures. All these Villianous Choices are very bad for our opponents. Now we have Wound Reflection. Every single end step, each opponent will lose life equal to life they lost that turn. So with all these Villianous Choices kind of not going your opponent's way, they're going to lose so much life that we're probably going to take over the game fast as possible. Next, we have Death in Heaven. Chapter 1, target player will mill 2 cards, then they have to exile the graveyard. Same thing with Chapter 2. Then Chapter 3, we get to put all creature cards that were exiled Death in Heaven on the battlefield face down as 2/2 Cyberman artifact creature tokens. Okay, let's get into the instants. There's not very many. First up, we have Don't Blink. Until end of turn, if 1 or more creatures would enter the battlefield from exile or being cast from exile, they get shuffled back into the library instead. This also has cycling. This does seem like a very strange ability, but if our opponents are trying to cheat creatures on the battlefield from exile, this is a good way to kind of hedge against that. Now we have Cyber Conversion. Until end of turn, we're going to turn target creature face down, and it'll become a 2/2 Cyberman artifact creature. Now we got some removal, so we have Snuff Out. If we control a swamp, we can pay for life rather than pay its mana cost. Or for 3 colorless and a black, we can destroy target non-black creature. It can't be regenerated. Now we have This Is How It Ends. Target creature's owner will shuffle it back into their library and then face a villainous choice. Either they lose 3 life or they shuffle another creature back in. Okay, let's get into the sorceries. First up, we have Feed the Swarm. We're going to destroy target creature or enchantment a opponent controls, and they're going to lose life equal to that permanent's mana value. Now we have Tyrant's Choice. This has Will of the Council as well. We're giving our opponents really bad choices. Each player will vote for death or torture. If death wins, each opponent will sacrifice a creature. If torture wins, each opponent will lose 4 life. Now we have Painful Truths. This has Converge. So we get to draw X cards and we lose X life, where X is the number of colors we spent on this spell. Now we have Bite of the Black Rose. So each player will vote for either Sickness or Psychosis. Creatures your opponents control will get -2/-2. Or if Psychosis gets more votes, each opponent will discard 2 cards. Now we have Exterminate. This has Replicate, so we can tap an untapped Dalek we control to copy the spell as we cast it. We can destroy target creature, and its controller will lose 3 life. Now we have Ensnared by the Mara. Each opponent will face another villainous choice. Either they exile cards from the top of their library until they exile a non-land card, and we can cast that without paying its mana cost. Or that player will exile the top 4 cards of their library, and Ensnared by the Mara will deal damage equal to the total mana of those exiled cards to that player. Now we have Plead for Power. This has Will of the Council as well, so each player will vote for either Time or Knowledge. If Time gets more votes, we get to take an extra turn after this one, and then if Knowledge gets more votes, we get to draw 3 cards. So this is kind of like a Time Warp or a Ancestral Recall. Now we have Great Intelligence's Plan. We get to draw 3 cards, and then target opponent will face a villainous choice. Either they discard 3 cards, or you may cast a spell from your hand without paying its mana cost. Now we have Capital Punishment. This has Council's Dilemma, so starting with you, each player votes for either death or taxes. Each opponent will sacrifice a creature for each death vote, or discard a card for each taxes vote. Now we have Choice of Damnation. Target opponent will choose a number. You may have that player lose that much life, and if they don't, they're going to sacrifice all but that many permanents. Of course, we have Blasphemous Act. This will deal 13 damage to each creature, and will cost 1 colorless less for each creature that's on the battlefield. Of course, we have Expropriate. This has Council's Dilemma as well. Each player will vote for either time or money. We get to take an extra turn for each time vote, or if money won the vote, we get to choose a permanent owned by that voter, and then we gain control of it. Now we have Doomsday Confluence. For 1 black and double X, X is however much mana you pay into it. You can choose X times or the same mode more than once. Either each player will sacrifice a non-artifact creature, create a 3/3 black Dalek, or each opponent will discard a card. Now we have Delete. This costs 2 red and X. We get to deal X damage to each non-artifact creature and each player. Okay, let's get into the land base. We have our command tower, Exotic Orchard. Now we have Gallifrey Council Chamber. When this enters the battlefield, we get to Surveil 1. It can tap for colorless mana, or it can tap for any color, but we can only spend it on either Time Lords or alien spells, or activate abilities of Time Lords or aliens. Of course, we have Xander's Lounge, Crumbling Necropolis. We have Watery Grave, Steam Vents and Blood Crypt as our shock lands. Now we have our check lands with Drowned Catacomb, Dragon Skull Summit, and Smoldering Marsh. Some cycling lands, so we have Kenyan Slough and Fetid Pools. We also have Sunken Hollow. Now we have Shipwreck Marsh, Haunted Ridge, we have Storm Carved Coast. We have some temples, so we have Temple of Deceit, Temple of Malice, and Temple of Epiphany. When these enter, we get to scry one. Now we have Fiery Islet. Now we have River of Tears. This will tap for a blue mana. If we played a land this turn, it'll add black mana instead. Now we have Darkwater Catacombs, Shadow Blood Ridge. Now we have Creeping Tar Pit as a man land. We can pay a colorless, a blue, and a black, and Creeping Tar Pit will become a 3/2 blue and black elemental creature, and it can't be blocked that turn. Now we have Lava Cloud Regis. Same thing, except in the Rakdos colors. We can pay X, and that creature will get +X/+O until the end of turn. Now we have Terramorphic Expanse to go get whatever basic we need. Now we have Path of Ancestry. This will enter tapped, but we can add 1 mana of any of our commander's color identity. And if we use that mana to cast a creature spell that shares a creature type with our commander, we get to scry one. Now we have Ominous Cemetery. We can pay 5 colorless, exile Ominous Cemetery, and target creature's owner will shuffle that creature back into their library. This is a good way to get rid of a creature or protect one of your own. Of course, we have Reliquary Tower, because we're going to be drawing lots of cards, and we want to keep those in our hand. Now we have Temple of the False God. This will add 2 colorless, but only if we control 5 or more lands. We have 2 islands, 2 swamps, and 2 mountains. And that was the Commander deck tech for Davros Dalek Creator. I really hope you guys enjoyed this Grixis Villianous Choice build. It's really fun to play with this Doctor Who theme build with aliens and Cybermen and Time Lords and whatnot. But let me know in the comments below if you guys have any suggestions for how to improve this build, or if you just like giving your opponents really bad choices. I'll leave the link to the deck list in the comments below to the Mox field. Until next time, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, share these videos, and I'll see you in the next one.